Well, hi. Uh, so I think that this photo has a lot more potential than it looks like. I mean, it's faded. This is an old photo. This baby's grown, and it looks, like Polaroid quality or something. Uh, anyway, I think the tropical foliage adds to it. This is a really cute baby. Um, and I like the way that she's holding the baby and the baby's hands are over this way. It just makes a nice shape there. Uh, so when I don't know what I want to do, which is usually the case, uh, it's nice to start out with a nice soft background. I really like all this foliage and I really wanted to play with it. You can see this is a situation you'll run into frequently. Look, this tree lines up right behind her head. It looks like an extension of her hat or something. So I moved the tree over this way, and I've put some foliage in and moved it around a little bit. So these are the parts of the foliage that will probably be the most prominent in the end, but I'm going to add more on as I go. Uh, Also, you will see a little very dark spot right there on the lip. I think there was a bug or something under my tracing paper and it's squished in there or something. Anyway, uh, it doesn't want to come up, and I'm not going to lift it up because that's a really bad mistake. You damage the paper, especially right there where the face is. The thing is, I could paint this whole thing, and then however much that stands out, I'll go back with a little bit of white ink, mixed with some color, and just barely cover that little spot, and you'll never know it's there. So, the little things like that are really easy fixes because they really don't show up. But it shows up now. In fact, it's kind of distracting. So what I want to do is I want to mix up some color that is, I kind of want a soft blend of stuff. I don't know. I'm going to, I can't live without putting Quinn Gold on stuff. So I'll start out with a little Quinn Gold over here. And, you know, okay, I guess I'll use a little cad yellow. I usually only use cad yellow, pale. Pale's the only one I have, or cad yellow light. I don't know which you call it, but I generally only use that for real pale glazes on top of other things, rather than using it in mixing greens. But I thought here I would. So let's try a little phthalo green. Oh, golly, that's strong. That's not that pretty, is it? Here it's not. Well, let's see what a little Quinn Gold into it. Well, that yellowed it. Okay. I'm going to keep this pretty pale first time out because I'm actually going to cover that tree trunk with just the greens and yellows at first. Here, let's do a little bit of that. Yeah. Okay. See, it feels better. We've softened all of them. None of them is pure anymore. And so they're going to blend together on the page better. The only thing that bothers me is I think I may not have enough color mixed. I know I don't. I hate it when I do that. It's better to have too much than not enough. And whatever I'm mixing up here, I'll probably use more of later. So it's a real nice thing that I have this plate. I have plenty of these plate things because I can let this dry in here and I can come back and use these same colors when I'm adding depth into the painting. Okay. All right, so let's do that again. Let's put a little bit of green into the quin gold, and a little bit of quin gold into the green. And here, let's dab over here and back this way. Okay. Now, real cadmium is very opaque. Oh dear, I wanted a little bit of yellow left. I think I've killed it. I may have to dip back into my palette for some color. Real cadmium is very opaque, which I like that about it because I generally glaze on top of other things with it. But in this particular case, it's not all that good, but it has so much brightness that it helps make up for any dulling effects that the opacity has. Let's just start out with a little yellow. See, I'm on dry paper, and I'm just going to got that hat with that. Well, both of these hats have, one's knitted and one's straw, so they both have an uneven thing going on there. Let's just do that. You know, I might leave a few little sparkles back here for now. I think the sparkles all be gone by the time I get through with it, but you know, it could be a good thing. I don't know what this part of this hat is. I don't care for it. I guess I could take it out, but maybe I won't. Okay, let's put a little of the quin gold, so that's going to give it a little bit of what would you call it, olive cast to it, because the gold has a lot of red. Maybe let's just dot in a little up here. There. Now we've got a spot. I should probably save it till last because my other paint's drying. But we've got a spot right in here between them that is, I want to be a little bit more careful with. It's right up against the face here. She has those attached kind of earlobes. Well, I mean, most of us, our ears are attached, but you know what I mean. The lobe touches her side of her head. So I may be getting that a little bit darker. I don't really care because this is going to get darker up here. Okay, and one of the nice things about the phthalo part of it is it's not going to leak onto the skin later. And the other colors, the yellows, probably won't do much either. Just because there's not much of them. Because cad yellow is bad about coming up. And this down in here is going to have some brown tones in it eventually. Let's see. I should do that with the little brush. I should be more careful. Sometimes I'm not careful enough. Or I'm not careful enough on, you know, when people are waiting and watching me. So, okay, let's just keep this moving on over here. So we've got all of that. This is out past the edge of the actual painting. You know, it's better to paint out past the edge of the actual painting. And unless, when you crop with tape, and a lot of the time, I mean, that's great like for little cards and things. But when you crop with that tape, if you don't get it really straight and you want to frame the piece later, you may find that you are limited in some ways. See, it's kind of bright. I really don't have as much variation in here as I really wanted. I wonder if... No, that's not going to do anything. Okay. We'll just have to live with what I've got here. It's the first layer anyway. So I did run this pretty much, you know, I would like to crop that right at that top. So I should have given myself a little bit more room. Most of y'all aren't going to frame this anyway. I just think this is a really charming little shape between the two of them, and then with the tropical foliage, I think that makes that really interesting. Let's put a little. You know, we could put a little of this over in here. In fact, there's still sheen on the paper, so it's probably not hurting anything. But if it did make a backflow in here, I would think that would be just a lovely addition, actually. Now remember, when you paint, like throw in a little different color or something, do some of it up to the edges. Don't make a halo around your subjects. I'm coughing, but I promise it's not COVID. It's from chewing peanuts. Oh, let's see, oops, that is part of her shirt right there. Okay, well, it'll have some green reflected light on it. In fact, I'll just pull a little down here like that. And some of this down in here is going to get darker again. Just because it's further down in the shadows, I think. Okay, there. So, now I've got to get that dry. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it dry naturally. I think you get a little bit better results. The hairdryer is great for smoothing things out. And sometimes you might have a situation where you want to smooth something out. But most of the time, I like to let the natural things happen. Plus, I think that you get a little bit better set in your paper. And actually, it's not going to bother me if a little of this color gets into the figures, like right here, because they're surrounded by green. So there should be some green on them. But in general, if you don't want the paint to run later, you have less of it will run if it gets to set and go down in the paper rather than drying it on top. If that makes sense. Gravity is my friend. Okay, so now let's do a little bit on skin. And by the way, see, I have saved my color here. And I'm starting out with a new plate on my skin. So here's the thing. I've got a lot of choices how to handle this, simply because there's so much here that I really don't know. That, like I said, this is really faded. I think that they look a little pinker than the skin was probably a little pinker looking than it really should be. So I'm just going to make a guess at what to do. So let's see, I think I've got everything in view here. Oh, so let's do it this way. What are we going to do for skin? Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and start out with my generally the same mixture that I generally use, and that's quinacridone coral. I'm probably going to change it up rather soon. I could even, well, let's just test something. I've got yellow ochre here. This is Cheap Joe's just plain old yellow ochre, which I think is a little more yellowy than Daniel Smith's. Let's pull a little of this over in here. So the thing about this is that this isn't going to be quite as bright as what I might normally get with Quin Coral, because the yellow ochre kind of dulls it a little bit. And so that's a little more like skin that's got a little more pigment in it. Let's do a little more of this so I've got enough. I still made that kind of pinkish. Okay, let's see what this looks like. I plan to do this mostly about the eyes, nose, and mouth, and not do a lot of shape shading on this one. So okay, let's look. We'll just test it right over here, and we'll get to see what it looks like next to this green. Okay, I think that'll be quite nice. Because I'm not going, like I said, I'm not going to do a lot of shading on it, so I'm not going to be putting a lot of layers of blue or other colors on it that might tone it down. So this will start out a little quieter. And let's see. I think I can go ahead with this size brush. This is my 3/4 inch. She has almost no hair showing, just a little bit at the sides. So I'm on dry paper. Small area to cover. There's just no need to pre-wet. You see, I'm going to join the baby's arm with the grandmother's neck. I want that. There'll be plenty of time to separate them. But I think it's nice to have as many body parts as possible joined in the first wash. I could do this with a smaller brush. I will lay down eventually a little bit more color than what you see in the photo. So that photo is really, it has a look to it that I recognize as going with fading. And here we go, right onto the baby's face. And we'll pull this on up into her hair, because she has dark hair anyway, so we can do that. Okay, there. Oh, there's a little bit of neck. All right, there. Okay. So further down, we've got just hands. There's no baby leg showing there at all. Generally, unless you have posed someone's hands, there's nearly always something awkward. in shaping them in the general silhouette of the hand. Or this hand, the thumb is very foreshortened, so it looks really strange. And then that goes off the page. See, this down here is crops. So, and see, I would even keep that in the picture normally, but I don't have hand to look at here. So I'm definitely stopping it right there. Okay, so there's that little bit. Now let's let this dry. Well, already I've been looking at this, and that's just too much green in that tree, because I don't know that I'm going to make that tree really dark. I might make it a lot darker than the picture, but I'm not sure. Because I really don't care what kind of tree it is. So I don't care about making it truly representative of that kind of tree. So I'm going to just weaken a little bit of this. Well, it's not going to weaken a whole lot, is it? Okay. There. Oh, that's enough. So I thought I would put a little bit of a layer of a dark in here. And all I'm going to do is take some burn umber. And by some burn umber, I mean this is going to be just a glaze of burn umber. Let's see what that looks like down here. Whoa. Well, yeah. Okay. Oh, let's see. This is the edge of her clothing. See if I can get that right this time. There we go. Oh, little skips. That would be good. Little skips. You know, this tree trunk is lining up with the edge of her clothing there. And I don't actually have the line drawn on it. I'm going to put the line on it out this way. You can't see that yet because I can't draw it because I've already got the paper wet. So I thought that I would just paint around some of these leaves. Since I plan for these to be the most prominent leaves. And of course, I could go ahead and get the brown in there because it's a tree trunk. Yeah. So, da-da. What is that? Oh, I know what it is. Okay. That's just another leaf there. Oops, and I don't want that to all flow together. See, that's that tree trunk. Okay, see, that mutes it all a little bit, which just makes me feel better right now. Because I walked up and I looked at it, and all of a sudden, the green just seemed too strong and bright. Of course, this is a bad time to try to judge it because There's almost no color on the page yet except for that green. Whoops. Phone. So you don't need to watch me paint the rest of this. So I just finished covering this, and this side is drying a little bit. I thought I'd splatter a little water on it. Just cover the face here. See if I could get a little back. Yeah. So see, I'm getting a little bit of backflows in there. It's real pale because it's a pale wash. So I got this pale blossoms. Blossom's a good word for it, isn't it? Let's call it a blossom. Backflow sounds like something to do with plumbing. So I didn't get very much because only part of it was at the right degree of dryness. There was a lot of variety in here. Here it just pushed the color out of the way, but it's not making much of a... Oh, there's some pattern beginning to come into it. So I kind of like this because it just adds a little complexity in a background where I don't want to have to put in a lot of detail. And so instead of putting in a lot of detail, I can do a little bit of this. And that'll make it feel more like I did more. Let's see. Oh, I didn't put the brown in here yet. Be real careful in here. Pretty much real careful. Okay. This spot is fixing to, it's lost its sheen, but it's still very moist. That's just the right time. It doesn't do a whole lot, but just feels a little bit more organic back there, like something is happening. Eventually, I'm going to have to do something about this leaf right here because it just looks like, again, like something pointing at her head or coming off of her head. But there's going to be more stuff going on, so we'll see. There, that's a better shape. Okay, so now I go off and leave it again. Okay, so what I have done that I don't generally think to talk about is I flipped this over as soon as it was dry, and I wet down the whole back of the paper. I let that soak in. I got it really wet. Let it soak in, and then I went over the back of it with a hair dryer slowly. You know, I didn't like wave it around like we do so we don't burn our scalp. I held it on the paper. I wanted the paper to heat up because I want the thickness that's on the back to shrink as much as the thickness on the front is shrinking. The layer of the front is shrinking so that it won't have the tendency to keep curling up like that as I've been using the hair dryer on it and getting it wet. So now it's more evenly shrunk. So I'm just going to do one quick little thing here. More burnt umber. And now I'm just going to do a little bit of splatter. Remember, your brush needs to be loaded. So it's depending on the size splatter you want. If it's real loaded and drippy, you'll get bigger, rounder dots. If it's a little drier than that, then you have to sling it a little harder and you get a different pattern. So I know I'm blocking your view of this, So I want a few splatters on here. One of the things about splattering right now with burnt umber is that it's not going to stay looking like this. There. Okay, maybe I'll do a little bit of artificial splatter. Okay. It's not going to look like this when I'm through, in part because as I build other layers, some of this burnt umber is going to come up, because burnt umber is very much not staining. Real burnt umber is. You know, if you're buying some one of the ones that's meant to be bright, pretty colors, some of them aren't using burnt umber. They're using some synthetic mixtures that are very pretty, but they may not. You see how that pattern's almost too regular here? It's nice though. It's a nice amount. I think I would like a little of that going on over here. Get that off of her ear. And the other thing about burnt umber, see, is it blots up even so easily that it's less of a problem. Hold on, Sophie. Let's not do that right now. Sophie's chewing a plastic bottle. So now I'm gonna weaken some of this. That spot there is kind of blobby. And as I look at this, I think, you know, maybe I want to go ahead and take some water, break through some of it. You could also just spatter it with water. So I'm just creating a little bit of activity in this background that, again, is going to feel kind of organic. We're going to put more leaves and trunk and stuff in here, but this gives us a good stage to work on. That's oh yeah, that's going to be very good. So our only problem is that we don't have any of that happening in here, and I'm not going to fling it in there, so maybe I'll just do a little bit of this kind of thing. I don't have that quite as strong as the other, so if I blot it, it may all come up. Let's see. Okay, there. You got to come up to the edge some of the time so you don't get a halo effect around the edges. I think what I need to do there is okay, we'll stop like that. So I'm much more pleased with this. You know, when I walk up and see it and it looks like this, I'm not so bothered as I was when it was all that bright green and kind of flat. Okay, here's what I did off camera. I didn't intend to, but it happened. So, so you can see the whole thing. Yeah. I painted the tree in, and I used, well, wait a minute. Before I painted the tree in, I drew some more leaves out here. Here's what I did to draw the leaves, because I wanted it to look like the same kind of leaves. So I actually, oops, this way. Yeah, I traced this onto here. I flipped it over. I've forgotten whether I wound up using it flipped over or not. I think I didn't. So here's the thing. I use this as sort of a starting point for making some leaves. So I would just sort of contour drew these shapes in, but then I began to change them a little bit, and I enlarged these because I don't want them to look exactly like the same thing. Then over here, there's a couple more that I did, again, from this, but I began to separate the leaves and change them around. So, so that they're different, but they feel kind of like the same kind of leaf. Then I painted the tree in here, And I just used burnt umber. And, you know, a pretty thin concentration. And I, every now and then, added a little bit of ultramarine while it's wet, you know, and work this in. So some areas are more of a reddish brown, some areas are blue. This is the most extreme contrast here. So I painted that in behind the leaves. So you can see these leaves are darker than those. And then I decided, you know, it's going to be too out of balance. I need something dark on this side. So I made up a couple of limbs that I think are kind of like this kind of thing, except they're smaller. I didn't really care if I didn't want another big limb. I kind of wanted a couple of smaller things. Think of these as stripes. I just added in, you know, another design element. So, and I treated them the same way. As this was beginning to dry, I went ahead and added in little bits of water, and I got a little bit of a blossom here and a little bit of blossoms there. They're not real noticeable. I mean, I would love it if they had turned out really noticeable, but they do add a little texture to the trunks that is subtle. So the last thing I'm going to do for this lesson is we're going to put in some yellows. By the way, this is a white shirt. Doesn't look all that white here, but it's a white shirt. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to paint some gray shadows on it. I'm going to eventually mix some neutrals that are in the gray family out of colors that I am using in the painting to make shading, but I'll do that towards the last. At least I'll get further down the road than I am now before I try to judge exactly what I want it to be. So for now, I am taking Cheap Joe's Naples Yellow. I like Cheap Joe's because it's more of a yellow. And I'm using it because it's got some white in it, so it just makes it a lot softer. And you can see this is just a ducky yellow thing here that she's got on. So and we're still thin it down with a lot of water. Let's see how dark that is. That is still a little more yellow. I guess by the time it dries, it'll be pretty subtle. And here is the edge of the grandmother's shirt. And everything that I'm painting today, I am painting very wet so that it flows together and you don't have to overwork it. I don't like the overworked thing that happens. Sometimes some of you are just too nervous about losing control and you try to paint too dry. And then the next thing you know, it's overworked because you were trying to spread the paint around or lift the paint, control the paint when it's too dry to work with. And that gives you that overworked look. I can't say that I have stayed in the lines really well up here, and I'm not that concerned about it, although I do intend for this to be a portrait, and so I'm going to be maybe a little pickier on the face than you might want to bother with. Because these are pretty small faces, and these aren't people that you know, and they don't particularly have, especially the baby, has very little expression. Okay, let's put a little yellow trim. This is the back part of her hat hanging off. I could have just left that out. Kind of wish I had have. And then over here, there's a little bit of yellow border showing up on it. And I'm just sort of noodling around kind of funny shapes here. This is a woven hat of some sort. There. Okay, we've got that. Now, I thought I would use some raw sienna for the grandmother's hat. Let's see what, a little raw sienna, thinned out a whole lot. Oops, I picked up the wrong thing. Let's look again. I don't have all my lights on. Oh my goodness. Is this showing up okay? Yeah, it's showing up. I'm not sure. Your color may look a little different. I didn't turn on one of my lights. In fact, there's outside sunlight flickering through right now. Okay, so I'm just going to take raw sienna and put a light glaze of raw sienna in here on this hat. See, nice and wet, just let it flow. Don't try to do the shading right now. Let the shading be a different layer. That's where you get into trouble, is trying to shade. And so then you got to work drier to do it, and bad things happen. So, okay, there we are. This is our beginning, lesson 1 of, what should I call this? Grandmother and child, I guess. Okay, bye. Okay, I'm holding it up so you can see it. There's lesson 1 of grandmother and child. There we go. Bye.